I can show you how to hook it up if you want to just take a picture of it. It's you connect A to A and B to B, power to power, and ground to ground. So you're done.
Maybe that's the only thing. It's the RFID reader. Oh, and you said you already have magnetometer readings coming in? Oh.
Yep.
Can we all copy you on that?
Yep. Did I paste the gist already? The problem with all these gist pasting that I did is that it doesn't necessarily tell you what's in them. I think this was the issue report. The reason that the magnetometer wasn't working when I loaded the Linux driver was that this config to compile in the magnetometer driver wasn't in there. That's funny. He said it was working. It wasn't working for me until I made the change, but and it's not enabled. Yeah, that's wrong. He's looking at the wrong kernel. He must have forgotten to copy it over from one kernel to the other. Anyway, it's not fixed upstream, so this is a little bit complicated because I had to build this source file, like with these commands, kind of like what we did. I think didn't we do one of these yesterday?
Build a source file.
Build a kernel module. I feel like I'd given instructions on. I know some folks did a. You built a kernel module
Right.
for the accelerometer.
I tried
for
I
the.
think I failed. And then you helped me.
Yeah. So, if ever in doubt as to what config options are set, proc config.gz shows the config options for the actively running kernel.
What important information is config options? Or what's an example of a config option?
Yeah. Too many tabs. Start closing stuff. I want to come back to that. Don't want to come back to that. Don't need to come back to flight. Worry about Jupyter Notebook another day. Boot scripts. We'll play with Node.js. I updated the pinout diagram so they don't have to keep looking for it. I updated the wiki based on, like, I kept going to this and it didn't have a good drawing, so there's now a good drawing on the wiki for a pinout diagram.
Oh, okay, great.
It shows you which pin and where they're at.
Yeah, we've seen this, but it was kind of buried.
It was buried in the Google group, and where you were looking for it on the wiki is where you think to find stuff, so that's why I moved it. This is actually a deep link to the image on the Google group. I swear I just had it. Here we go. So this is an example of a config option. This is the flag in compiling the kernel that decides whether or not this magnetometer is supported in the build of the kernel. So it's like, I don't get it. Why isn't it loading? Well, you know, I've learned now by making this mistake a bunch of times to try to load it and it's not showing up that to actually go and build it. To go look at this config option. So if I look at this config option, it is currently built. So he was right.
M means unbuilt?
M means build as a module. So actually, if I look in lib modules 4. This is now 22. I'm gonna do find. Find just dumps out all of the programs underneath that to standard out, and I'm gonna grep AK 89. Okay, it's built. It's in there. Kernel module's there. So that wasn't that's not the problem anymore, at least in this kernel. I was running a kernel that was a couple days ago. That was a couple days old. It might not have been in that one. Anyway, I've updated my kernel. That's there. So that is what this magic right there tells you. It tells you it was built in the config, and where does it actually live? It lives in lib modules. Because just because it was built doesn't mean it's still in the file system. Somebody could have removed it. So if I do if something tries to load it, it will find it. It is there.
So previously, RCPY tried to load this magnetometer?
No. RCPY and librobot control do user space drivers. They do not use the Linux kernel drivers. So for us, when we were just trying to read from a file, we were looking at, we were just trying to read this file, the sys bus IO devices, IO device in, and then look for magnetometer values. There were none. That was our issue. I'm gonna look at one other thing in the response to my issue. There's one other notable thing I changed. Yep, there it is.
Just refresh the page.
This AK, I looked in the kernel sources. It's no longer AK. Somebody changed it to the full name of this company, Akashika. I don't know what it is. So here, Asahi Kasei. You need to have full Asahi Kasei. The example that he gave back didn't have. Initially, I did AK, comma, not Asahi Kasei. So now if I reboot my board, I've edited boot uenv.txt to specify this MPU 9250 overlay. And so when I reboot, it will now load that driver. So right, I had it disabled last time I booted. So sys bus IO devices. It only has device 0, which is the ADC.
IIO is all
Industrial I/O. A lot of the sensor devices are going to show up under IIO. I've got a separate presentation I can give you on IIO. I can download a presentation just like somebody else's and talk to you about IIO.
Would we expect to see the pressure sensor, humidity, or all the other devices, the sensors that are on here, and ADC or
ADC, DAX, temperature, pressure, humidity, distance.
So why we only see one device?
The only one loaded is ADC. Everything else is user space driver. So RC, test, MPU. That still works. It's not using that device driver. It's using dev I2C. So it's using that. It's using that thing I tell you not to use. And it's part of the problem is that now, I love James and I love the work he's done, but you know, where is he to get code changes? Right? We can fork his code and we can do changes and we can try to work on your magnetometer drift issue. But if we submit that magnetometer issue, drift issue to the Linux kernel developers, we have a whole community of developers behind that driver. They're using it in mobile phones and it's actually used in Android devices in production, and we're using the same code. My preference, let's use where we can, let's just use the Linux kernel driver. For the motors, let's just stick with the Strawson library motor drive stuff. But for some of the sensors, where we've got Linux kernel drivers, why not just use them?
So, what steps do I do from the very start to get my magnetometer x-axis?
So, today will be somewhat different than tomorrow. But
should I wait?
today, because it looks like you're running this same kernel as I am. But one thing you don't have, if you go into opt source overlays,
name minus a R22 Buster.
you don't have this file in this folder, which means that you don't have the output of this file in lib firmware. Didn't build enough overlays for that to make sense? No, okay.
Overlays are pretty confusing.
So in opt source, we have a bunch of sources. So we have things like the U-boot sources. So the bootloader sources are actually there in the image as well. You could rebuild the bootloader here locally if you wanted. There's also a lot of different sources. Those device trees that we talked about, the things that define the base platform, and then the overlays that modify it, right? So if we all agreed on exactly what hardware we're hooking up to the board, we would never have to do an overlay.
Yeah.
But because we change it, we kind of put what we know is there in the that the people are going to use in the base file, and then the overlay is changes that you might want to make.
And does it matter which ports we're talking about plugging things into, or it's just the drive?
Well, something like USB is a probable, discoverable bus. When I plug a device into USB, it describes itself to the operating system and loads the appropriate driver.
That's rare.
Rare and embedded. For your desktop PC, that's what you're used to.
Everything.
Right? Everything's a discoverable bus. Right? You don't. All the stuff that's non-discoverable is built inside the casing, and you can't extend it. But the SD cards, the USB, all these things are on discoverable buses. We don't have that option on an embedded device. You know, they want low-cost interfaces. You know, adding something like USB adds a lot of overhead. So, what do we have? Right? We've got a way to describe the overall system, and we can apply that to add-on items using overlays. The bootloader provides us a mechanism for doing overlays. I was really surprised yesterday when I was able to, the kernel also has a mechanism for updating the device tree live. It's not, it's not fully accepted mainline at this point. That's not in everybody's Linux kernel. That's an out of tree thing. That was your computer that I was just able to load the overlay, and I don't.
You're saying my computer, that was SSH to David's Beaglebone.
David's Beaglebone.
Yeah, that was after my brain expired.
So I don't see the